Good morning. Thank you for being with us today here at the Amari Bangkok Hotel. Also saying hi and morning to our online participants and speakers. Welcome to the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference. My name is Anne-Marie and I am your co-MC for this morning. Before we proceed, we would like to share a few reminders for the online attendees. Kindly use this format for your Zoom name, organization name / your name. This is so we can recognize the organizations and affiliations that you are representing. Kindly keep your microphones on mute. If you have questions or clarifications, please feel free to use the chat box as we will make sure to read them during the panel discussion. To all our participants, both here at the venue and in Zoom, your feedback matters to us, so kindly fill out the evaluation forms that are included in the event kit and submit them to us after today's sessions. And lastly, we would like to request everyone to upload or share photos of you attending the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference. We'd be glad to see your photos uploaded online, pages, and your groups. Please don't forget to use the hashtags, hashtag SRG8thAPDC, and hashtag SRG in Bangkok. To officially begin, let us all stand as we will now have the parade of flags and the singing of the national anthems of the Philippines, USA, and Singapore to signify the countries where Spring Rain Global is registered and operating, and the national anthem of Thailand as the host country for the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference.
Bayang mag-iiw, teras ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulubig, di ka pasisiing. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilag ang tuna at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang islap ng watawag mo'y tagumpay na naniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan tambay di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walang pansinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mang-aakit ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright star through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Or say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Mari kita rakyat Singapura sama-sama menuju bahagia, cita-cita kita yang mulia, berjaya Singapura. Marilah kita bersatu dengan semangat yang baru, semua kita berseru, majulah Singapura, majulah Singapura. Marilah kita bersatu dengan semangat yang baru, semua kita berseru, majulah Singapura, majulah Singapura.
ธงชาติและเพลงชาติไทยเป็นสัญลักษณ์ของความเป็นไทยเราจงร่วมใจยืนตรงเคารพธงชาติด้วยความภาคภูมิใจในเอกราชและความเสียสละของบรรพบุรุษไทย
เอกราชจะไม่ให้ใครคนอื่น in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe.
La luce che tu dai
I pray we'll find your
nel
light
cuore resterà,
and hold it in our
a
heart.
ricordarci
When
che
stars go out each night,
l'eterna stella sei nella mia preghiera.
let this be our prayer.
Quanta fede
When
c'è,
shall fill our day.
lead us to a place,
Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe.
sogniamo un mondo senza più violenza, un mondo di giustizia e di speranza, ognuno dia la mano al suo vicino, simbolo di pace, di fraternità. La forza che ci dà
We ask that life be
il
kind
desiderio che
and watch us from above.
ognuno trovi amore
We hope it's all we'll find.
intorno e dentro sé.
Another soul to love. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our prayer.
Just like every child,
Just like every child, need to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe.
e la fede che hai acceso in noi, sento che ci
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Spring Rain Global Prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be called in this noble endeavor of serving people and organizations through our thrust for a deeper love for humanity and stewardship of our giftedness. As we respond to this ministry each day, fill us with the power of the Holy Spirit, that your wisdom may enlighten us, that your strength may remind us to stay focused in our purpose and calling, that your light be our guide at all times, and that your love be in our hearts. We know that the journey may not always be easy, but we firmly believe and hold on to your promise that you will be with us both in our challenges and victories, as we bring love and unity to your people in service for others. We continue to pray that as we grow the mission and purpose of our Spring Rain Global family, we may be sustained by your grace,
ready to open the path for others, so that your blessings and divine providence may completely flow to each and every one of us. May we always stay in your grace, now and forever. This we ask in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
To talk about igniting the philanthropy landscape in Asia, let us all welcome our first speaker and the master of ceremonies of the 8th Spring Rain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference, Father Czar Emmanuel Alvarez, OSA.
Mic test. Again, good morning to everybody. It's nice to see familiar faces. Some of them I have been attending this Spring Rain Global Conference since 2017, way back in Singapore. Who among you joined that conference at Santec in Singapore in 2017? Please raise your hand. What about in 2018 in Bali, Indonesia? 2019, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I told you. I can see familiar faces here. And now here we are, 2024 in Bangkok, Thailand. This morning, I have been tasked to kick off this year's event with a presentation of the philanthropy landscape here in Asia. I will be mentioning some areas which I think should be the focus of our philanthropic activities this year and in the immediate years to come, as well as some suggestions on how to go about it. Philanthropy, I'm sure all of you know, literally means love for humanity. And it plays a crucial role in the upliftment, development, and promotion of the various dimensions of a person and the different aspects of life. Of particular interest in this case is man's social and economic life, which has a strong impact on the way man expresses his dignity, exercises his rights, and develops himself. While every nation tries to work on it through governmental means, we simply cannot rely on the public services and aid provided by the state alone. Groups and individuals with a generous heart and an authentic love and concern for others are necessary. They supplement and complete what is lacking from the services and help coming from public institutions. Hopefully, with philanthropic assistance, the various needs of people from all over the world would be satisfied and their situations would be improved and rendered conducive to people's full development and growth as human dignity deserves. Talking about people's needs, the list is not only long, but also complex. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, identified and adopted by the United Nations in 2015, is just a good starting point. They cover most of man's pressing needs today and address their more urgent concerns. As you can see on this slide, we speak, for example, of poverty, hunger, health, education, sanitation, employment, climate change, pollution, peace, justice, etc. The target date for their realization is the year 2030. Some are pessimistic as to whether the UN would succeed in reaching its goals by 2030, but this should not dishearten us, but rather challenge us more to work better and harder and to unify our efforts to contribute in one way or another to the attainment of such goals. However, philanthropy is not an abstract idea, but a concrete course of action to take. Love for humanity must be expressed in concrete, tangible ways. To translate it into something concrete and real, philanthropy must take into account not only the pressing needs of humanity, it must also consider certain factors that, in varying degrees, influence and condition the way we share our resources, the way they are received by their beneficiaries, and the way they are properly used and invested. It is necessary in this case to pay attention to certain global issues to watch in the current year 2024. Now, last December 2023, the UN Foundation identified at least 5 of the global issues to watch out for in 2024, and I would like to highlight some of them in my presentation. You may want to read the December 15, 2023 report of Megan Robert and MJ Altman in this case. Megan Robert is the media and content director of the UN Foundation, while MJ Altman is a senior communications officer of the UN Foundation. So let me start with the first of these global issues to watch out for in 2024. Next slide, please. First global issue is the existence of world crisis. First and foremost, the year 2024 is considered as a year of global crisis on different levels: health, environment, politics, war and violence, and so forth. We are now in a so-called new normal mode of living under the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus still exists, and variants of it appear from time to time, but it is no longer considered as a world health crisis as before. The pandemic has revealed the inadequacy of our health system in many ways and brings to the fore the urgent need to upgrade and improve our health systems. As to environmental crisis, we know that many countries currently struggle with pollution of various types: air pollution, water pollution, ground pollution. Plastic pollution, for example, chokes our oceans, adversely affects human health, and damages ecosystems vital to our livelihoods. More than 430 million tons of plastic are produced each year, 2/3 of which is cast aside as waste just after one use. Experts say that if trends continue, plastic waste will triple by the year 2060, with dire consequences for both ecosystems and human health. Air pollution is of equal concern. It is one of the greatest environmental threats to public health globally and accounts for an estimated 7 million premature deaths every year. As to war and violence, war has been on the rise since about the year 2012, after a decline in the 1990s and the early 2000s. Think of recent and ongoing conflict situations in the world: in Libya, in Yemen, and Syria in 2011, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Ethiopia, Myanmar in 2021, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, in 2023, just to name a few. We realize that problems overlap, and hence they should not be treated in isolation. For example, air pollution has a strong impact on health. Poverty influences crime rate. Politics and the declaration of war go together. Experts agree that there is a need to confront issues in a unified and coordinated way. Talking about the 17 SDGs of the UN, we need to move away from the emphasis on individual SDGs to champion and engage instead in a transformative way across all the 17 SDGs. Programming around 2 or 3 agendas simultaneously can prove to be quite helpful. In the Caribbean region, for example, they realized that more funds were made available for climate change issues. They then joined issues together in order to gather more funds and use them appropriately. They joined them to issues concerning justice as to enable the easy and smooth realignment of available resources from one advocacy to another. Perhaps this is one thing that philanthropy today should focus on joint programming around different advocacies instead of just focusing on single or individual SDGs. Next issue. Next slide, please. The crucial role of politics. The UN Foundation also underscored the crucial role that politics play in the way resources are allotted, distributed, and used in the society. We know that every nation prepares and approves an annual budget. There are political priorities on the agenda, and money is allotted to them accordingly. If no budget is put aside for certain social issues, then chances are that people would not have any fund to use when crises concerning such issues arise. For example, how much money in your government's annual budget is allotted for education, for health, for social services, for defense, for risk management, and calamities? The year 2024, this year, almost 40 elections of various types, general, national, regional, presidential, parliamentary, are scheduled to take place in Asia. For example, we have the forthcoming presidential and Senate election in Taiwan, a presidential election in Vietnam and Sri Lanka, a general election in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India, a national assembly in Bhutan and Nepal, and so forth. Experts rightly point out that our future is on the ballot. Hopefully, the people who will get elected would prioritize the main concerns and needs of the people and not their own interest. Now, while it all depends on the people who will occupy government posts after the election, and most of us do not directly participate in politics, we can influence their decisions. We can lead them to ratify agreements and issue political declarations to address certain issues. And in this way, we can put certain issues on their list of political priorities. Third issue. Next slide, please. The need to fix the existing financial system. Experts also point out the need to fix our existing finance system. The way the world handles funding is insufficient, unsustainable, and inequitable. There is a need for an international financial reform, and again, it is in the hands of our policymakers to work on this. Many are optimistic that with the new leadership at the World Bank, better ways of mobilizing resources will come about. This would probably be part of the agenda of the G20 summit to be held in Brazil this coming November 2024. Next year, it will be South Africa's turn to host the summit. The theme of this year's G20 summit is quite interesting: building a just world and a sustainable planet, which corresponds with the aspirations of global philanthropy. The recently concluded COP28, or the 28th UN Climate Change Conference, also known as the Conference of the Parties, held in Dubai last December 2023, highlighted the growing gap between the needs of developing countries and the money provided to cut emissions. It was agreed to transition away from fossil fuels and to focus more on renewable sources of energy and to allot more funding to it. The COP28 also was able to solicit financial commitments, and a deal was reached aimed at helping the most climate vulnerable countries. These are just examples of how finance resources can be better used to address global needs. Of course, much more is needed to fix the world finance system. Monetary policy governing loans and interest rates are just part of it. Proper investment and responsible financial management is also necessary. Needless to say, money does impact the way philanthropy works. Donors are also affected by financial systems, and so are the people and organizations they help. Next issue. Next slide, please. Promotion of human rights and equality. There is an increasing need to safeguard people's rights, particularly of women, children, and young people today. Many of them live in the most densely populated countries in the world. Statistics show that by the end of the century, 80% of the global population will be in Africa and Asia. Talking about children in particular, one expert pointed out that when we think about achieving the SDGs and securing a better world, we have to be thinking about the places that will be home to the majority of future generations. We talk about the need to provide them with access to education, health services, future employment, among others. Unless such fundamental needs are met, abuse, exploitation, and violation of their rights come easily. The promotion of human rights goes hand in hand with the fight for equality. There are still many countries here in Asia where women in particular are deprived of their rights to economic independence and education because of their gender. We need to recognize the crucial role that women today can play in bringing about social change. They must be given the chance to participate fully, for example, in peace and security matters. Many countries here in Asia have a rather conservative way of looking at things, and that includes the way women are looked upon and ideas about the limitations of what many think women should be doing. Such conservative way of looking at things are often associated with religious beliefs or are simply part of old social traditions. Philanthropy is challenged to bring about certain changes in this case. One way of doing this is by empowering women and getting them more actively involved in philanthropic activities in various fields. Philanthropy presupposes equal rights and recognizes the same dignity of all, independent of one's gender. Last issue, next slide please. The UN Foundation mentions the need for the UN to bolster its credibility. In the past 70, 80 years of its existence, the UN has been a vital and indispensable institution. In fact, the only global platform that gives a voice to every country and person on earth. It fosters conversations around the world's biggest problems and is the best platform to find collective solutions. Philanthropy promotes the same SDGs of the UN, and it would be best to establish link with such a venerable institution. We can do this, for example, through active participation in summits and conferences organized by the UN, or by being signatories to the various declarations and agreements endorsed by it, or even by sending representatives to the UN. Many religious orders, for example, do have representation at the UN. Other institutions can do the same. It is one way of letting them know our needs and also soliciting their support and help. So to conclude, based on the insights I have shared with you this morning, we can say that philanthropy has a vital role to play in the landscape of Asia today, which along with Africa is expected to be the most populous continent in the world in the years to come. It is a region with a dense population of women, children, and young people who find themselves in precarious situations due to health problems, conflict situations, environmental issues, violation of human rights and dignity, and so forth. It is where different types of crises converge and where more collaborative and unified philanthropic actions are needed. It is where politics plays a crucial role in determining the future of peoples and where political leaders must hear them and put their concerns on their priority list. Lastly, it is where people are in dire need of better public services and financial support. It is my fervent hope that in the remaining months of this year 2024 and in the years to come, we would see a significant growth in the philanthropy landscape in Asia. All of us can contribute to such growth. All of us can do something to help our more needy brothers and sisters and alleviate their helpless situations. Let us continue to work together and collaborate with the various organizations of our society in fulfilling the same aspirations that we share with the UN. Together, we can fight poverty and hunger, create a healthy and safe world, promote education, uphold fundamental human rights and equality, lessen pollution, and in this way, enable people to grow and develop according to their full potentialities. Thank you for listening. Okay, so it's my turn to present to you our next speaker. All of you are familiar with her. She's a registered nurse and also a professional consultant for philanthropy. She is a certified fundraiser. She completed her studies at the Center of Philanthropy of the Indiana University in Indianapolis of the United States of America. She's a forerunner of philanthropy in the Philippines and in Asia, being the founder of the very first philanthropic development system in the region. She has been an international registered financial consultant since 2006 and a member of the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants based in Ohio, USA. She received an ambassador award from the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants based in Ohio. She earned her doctoral degree in educational management from the University of San Jose Recoletos in Cebu. She's the founder of Spring Rain Global Philanthropy AI, or Artificial Intelligence, and founder and president of Spring Rain Global Foundation. So, ladies and gentlemen, to talk this morning about nurturing transformative change in philanthropy, please help me welcome Dr. Glenda Antonio.
Good morning once again. I am here to draw everyone to our theme, which is the nurturing of our transformative change in philanthropy. And what does the SRG ecosystem of good create impact to what we do? All right. So I'm going to share and focus on 4 areas, which I believe a lot of you in our conversations draw our thoughts, efforts, and dreams for the people that we serve. One is on sustainability. Number 2 is what is our roadmap to unlock our collective capacity as an ecosystem? 3 is how do we move forward to the transformative change in philanthropy? And number 4, what is our SRG ecosystem impact journey? What was the history and what impact have we created and what impact can we still create to address what Father Czar mentioned about the focus of the UN goals? All right, sustainability. I'm sure a lot of you here come and say, when I am at the crossroads of sustaining my mission, where will I go? Either you stop, you get frustrated, or sometimes you find resources maybe not able to navigate well enough because the ecosystem that you belong is not the right probably avenue for you to speak up and amplify your voice. So I want you to look at the gaps. In Spring Rain Global, when it started, we've really recognized this, that the social issues are there. It's been long there. Pandemic added even more. But this will continue to exist. There is still poverty, there is still homelessness, there is still hunger, lack of access to education, healthcare, environment, name it. However, if you see that side of the world, you see where our purpose is in humanity. But if you look at the other spectrum and side of the world, you will see opportunities to open up to the civic space and encourage more players to help in addressing these issues and achieve social development goals. I am in the privileged journey that I was able to witness both sides of the space. Small players like the communities, which all of you here, majority of you maybe, and funders who are here are looking at the grassroots communities, bottoms-up approach. The communities where you are carries the solution to the gaps that we are talking about in addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So these small players, aside from the recognized multilateral agencies, corporations, and big nonprofits, are wanting to do more and effect more change. In fact, in my very own eyes, communities who've developed programs in the midst of struggle still found their way how to sustain. However, with all the resources out there, people has to know where can we connect so we can scale up and do more. The hindrance then, as we saw in sustainability, is the lack of capacity, or perhaps the resources to make capacity building really scale. Manpower, skills, resources, and network. And the access to capital is very, very much available. There is this gap here, and Spring Rain Global is actually, or all of us are in that space. All of us are in that space to address that. So the UN Secretary General mentioned in his speech, we live in a complex world. The United Nations cannot succeed alone. Partnership must continue to be at the heart of our strategy. We should have the humility to acknowledge the essential role of other actors while maintaining full awareness of our unique convening power. Please take note, that each one of us has to play a role in the power that is entrusted for us for the good. We cannot just close our eyes. The Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. It would address these global challenges as mentioned by our previous speaker. So what are the sustainability trends right now? I'm sure there are organizations here running schools. Can you raise your hand? Those organizations running schools. Access to quality education is very vital in solving the issues of this global focus that we need to have. But how are our schools sustained? How do you think philanthropy should come in to play a major role to not just depend on tuition fee increases and not even able to let the students afford to go to school because tuition fee is so high already? Or perhaps government are giving free education, but how can you make a student go to school hungry because they lack food? If I am hungry, it takes a few seconds, I collapse already. Cannot concentrate with an empty stomach. These are what you struggle, and maybe a lot of these schools are going to the mission. Those schools earning and sustaining are those that are also building leaders on the other side. But the gap is to understand, the gap is to amplify, the gap is to connect. And so philanthropy then became a promising solution because many of us would believe that the only way to make this world a better place is to make everybody get access to quality education. Sad to say, there are still schools in Southeast Asia able to graduate at grade 6 but not able to read and write. I don't want to believe, but it's happening. And some NGOs create programs that would do tutorials just to make sure they are able to survive. With the trend of sustainability on schools, please let us take a look at how philanthropy can forge our resources to put up scholarship funds, to ensure that people understand how much does it cost to pay one student to school and not depend on tuition fee alone. Church, faith-based organization, you are the army that plays a very important role in creating impact. You've expressed your commitment, the church, and I am a witness of that. And faith-based organization, faith-based philanthropy is in the forefront also of Spring Rain Global's focus. Why? You're the organization who has been also blessed with enough human capital. And God uses people to make things happen. But if the church will not work together, then it won't create the dot to adjust the gap. As a church, we also have to not work in silos because our sustainability lies on the power that we can influence to convene everybody on the table and work closely together. We dream of the faith-based to also pioneer funding opportunities, funding spectrums. Faith-based impact investing is also in the spotlight of what we are going to be talking about in this conference. A lot of people are opening up foundations, but still unable to reach out to where the funds should go. And then what happens is there's just a linear effect of giving money, sending funds, and so on and so forth. But some of the foundations present here are already looking at how do we do a circular economy in addressing sustainability as a giving foundation. Dioceses were represented with 2 bishops, one leaving the diocese as Bishop Emeritus and another bishop taking in the diocese for Catanduanes. That is an example of a good transition, Bishop. And for me, I am honored to witness that representing the voice of the church. That leaders in the church should be able to do the same kind of power succession, because there is so much influence in leadership, I tell you, in the church. There's so much problem, as Father Czar was saying. Let this power dynamics transcend and spend more time for children praying that one day they have food tonight. For those children hoping that our meetings will ripple an effect for them. This convening that made you come here is a product of a prayer of someone else. And I still believe that our purpose has to be defined and founded and grounded by what we all can do together as a church. Parishes, non-government organizations, to stop looking at working in silos and competing, or civic associations like Rotary, who has an extensive manpower and capacity to help make the world a better place as what they've always done. Corporations looking at how do we sustain our companies to do social responsibility. We were talking about refugees yesterday on the UNHCR, who's going to be speaking tomorrow, and he said, you know, Uniqlo and all these big brands are there to help refugees because both for their companies and for them, for their social responsibility, it makes sense. But at some point, the person in charge for sustainability says it can't just be linear. It cannot, 1 million people, refugees in, if I'm not mistaken, Bangladesh, produce 30,000 children over the years. So a community has already been even in places that they are displaced. But how can a corporate social responsibility sustain a momentum of help? Their trust also had a lot of transformative mindset that was presented on the table. Family foundations are beginning to be formed. In Germany, family foundations are growing year after year after year after. And what does these foundations do? Support and give. But resources cannot just come out from heaven and just come to us. Convening like this shouldn't only be happening even once a year. It has to even be regionalized and in the forefront of a continuous progress and collaboration. It doesn't have to happen. So that was the sustainability challenges as well. Donors, there's a lot of funders and donors in this room. How do we collaborate that our efforts can bring about change in the way we look at things? Associations, networks, and professionals. So these are the realities, and building a philanthropy support is very important. We can't save the world, but we can save it one ecosystem at a time. And if Spring Rain Global is entrusted to work through this, it has to be locally driven, bottoms-up approach, and based on the needs of philanthropy and civil society actors in their specific context. Even where there is more developed, the infrastructure is not yet articulated as a proper ecosystem and to face these challenges. This calls for a new paradigm of collaboration within the field, a kind of strategic approach of those who are supporting its development to ensure we are all efficient and sustainable. The infrastructure is important. Your organization in its place, our ecosystem in its place has to be functional. Gone are the days that we belong to a network and that's it. We've been working hard to enable an environment that you have to collaborate, you have to show up, you have to speak out and say, hey, I can do this on the table. This is what I need, this is what. Don't wait for things to happen. The infrastructure is crucial to develop this philanthropy both quantitatively and qualitatively. It's not only serving donors, but also generating these new resources and leading donors towards the best use of these resources. So after sustainability, after knowing where we are, we need resources, we need this, we need that, we need to solve the world. What did we do? What are we doing? Are we creating our roadmap? I encourage you to unlock your collective capacity as an ecosystem. So by unlocking this capacity, what we do is we cannot also speak and convene if we don't understand each other. Something has to be a common ground for everyone. Otherwise, we will be talking this and we're not understanding at all. There is a bottom ground that we're talking, and that is to capacitate ourselves on what should we do and how should we do it. And later I will share to you about the impact of our SRG journey. As we provide this mentorship, it's not enough. We have to enable linkage to provide initial capacitation fund for those who need to be supported, and link to the players acting on similar advocacies to enable collaboration and possible scaling up of impact. So empowering change through innovation and collaboration begins with leadership. I highly would emphasize the leader in you when you go back to your respective organizations, and when we convene as an ecosystem, we have to get that leadership done. And last July, we mentioned about thought leadership. Why is there a need for thought leaders? When we solve problems, we can't just be wishful thinking. It has to be logical. It has to take the next step one over the other. Otherwise, we will fall short on thinking wrongly and expecting unnecessarily, but the steps are not getting there. The thought leader in us has to be ignited, I hope, in the next 3 days, to be visionary thinkers, to innovate ideas, to strategically guide in the realm of charitable giving and social impact. And I challenge you all to move up from conventional thinking. Oh, this is what I can think of. But pray for wisdom. Vincent Lim always tells us, pray for wisdom, that you will be thinking of new perspective. As a leader, God gives you that grace. I so believe that. You just have to listen to where the leading leads you. Your people may not understand, but you have the role to play. We all have the role to play to transform this to the next level. Advocate some transformative solutions to complex social issues. You have to drive in insights, experiences, and networks to spark that. And as thought leaders, we have to analyze challenges. Even prior to asking support and do fundraising, we need to analyze, why are we having these challenges? When one pastor told me, I'm sleeping in 114-hectare land, Glenda, and I'm not sustainable. And I said, 114-hectare land and you're not sustainable. Something is wrong with how you were. You know, there's ways on how we become good stewards to what we have, but I challenge conventional thinking. Learn to go back to what's given to you. With the little that you have, there's more that can be rippled. So as thought leaders, we are beacons of inspiration. We think, we feel, we act. But if we only feel and not think, and we're not logical, then we might be missing so many opportunities that should be in the pipeline. So in the recent study from the Asian Center for Social Entrepreneurship, there's a lot of frustrations happening in philanthropy, and that is because of the discontentment of the status quo. There is a desire to sustain social impact, but it only ends up with desire. I wish the world will be better. I wish. So that was a frustration. And there's also awareness that, are the resources used inefficiently? The doubts, the trust issue on how resources are done, that's how we see that systems is important to make sure that credibility still will strengthen this. And the connection between the business and the philanthropy sector, which should work together. That's why some countries right now are already doing incentives to policies, to companies, social responsibility, so we can act together and collaborate and move forward. Social issues are too complex. They cannot be solved in single interventions. So as the role of thought leaders in philanthropy, please do innovate, but be inspiring in your innovation. You cannot be authoritative in your innovation, because as so long as you don't enable, the spirit will not move. And if the spirit will not move, it will just be human. Human as we are, we get burned out. Oh, the problem is still there. There's still hungry people. I keep feeding this community, and I keep feeding over again, and then you get tired. Be an inspiring thought leader as you are. Drive collaboration. Do not just collaborate. Drive. When you say drive, lead. Lead is to move. You collaborate, but if you don't drive, nothing will happen. It will be another conference. another conference, and another conference. We want to see progress moving forward as we're counting 2030 nearing us. Advocate for impact. Always look for impact. When you talk about impact, there's something going on decision making, evidence-based practices. Some people don't want to look at impact as people fed. It's how many people are fed, how many people are in the poverty line. But it's still a huge problem, but at least in our ecosystem, we're going to work through how do we advocate this impact and move forward. When you are a thought leader, you also empower others. You cannot do it alone. Sometimes we tend to do things as leaders, but there are always the call of time to delegate. But you cannot delegate if you don't inspire. You cannot also inspire if you don't have the heart to let these people understand that they have a role to play while you have a role to play. Discernment is okay, but don't discern too long when the answers are clear. Because sometimes when we pray too long, we ask for so many questions. People are still keep on praying and say, where's the food? How do miracles happen? Of course, God will help, but there's urgency. There's urgency when you have to do that. And you also have to shape your narrative. In order for you to be influential in transforming change in philanthropy, what is your narrative? Your narrative is your experience in transformation that makes people see and follow you in where you actually are. So as you move forward to the transformative change in philanthropy, visionary thinking is very, very important. Have the right people to be with you in your network. Do the transformative change. And I always challenge status quo. Maybe because of that human nature in me that I'm always upbeat and, moving forward, but I always challenge status quo. Nicole, one donut, eat two or three. Don't just eat one. But it's status quo. You disrupt established norms without destroying the charisma and the uniqueness in you. You may change for the good. It doesn't mean that you change and you cut everything, right? It has to. And philanthropy, we all do this because we love humanity. We only pass this world just once. And if there's anything we can do now by the present, we will do it, for we will not pass this way again. So as a transformative moment for philanthropy, what is our leadership call? Vision for impact you want to create. Imagine the impact you want to create. 155 people in this room. I'm sure God will bless you with the wisdom, but what is your impact? How do you foster partnerships and collaborations with like-minded individuals? When we draw our speakers and invite to put pieces together, the right people and organization come for the same purpose we are called. This is the space for us. A space for us to enable positivity and network and leverage among our expertise. Some solutions are made through wisdom. Some solutions are made because you partner. Some solutions are made because there's actual giving. But trust the process and don't doubt. You're already here. You're called to do that. Embrace innovation and creativity all the time. Because if you don't innovate, you will be burned out as well. You won't grow in a way that it's more efficient. And invest in local communities. The local communities, even if Father Czar next year will tell us another landscape and another problem, the only way to measure that is what is the record on the ground. Even funders cannot measure if there's no actual communities telling us if there is still poverty. I had one funder in the family office in Singapore, and she told me, I will go to Vietnam and look for the community I want to fund. Does she really have to do that? She can once, but not all the time. But where's the collaboration done, right? So the communities invest, diversify philanthropic initiatives, but be open and honest of your goals. If you're not yet there, be open you're not yet there. If the timelines is dragging you, navigate and don't blame. Stop the blaming, but be brave enough to think of navigating other source of resources that would allow us to collaborate. And again, in a thought leader and a transformative change leader, we have to be systems thinking. Your problem affects everyone else. If you're happy, we'll also be happy. If you're sad, we'll also be sad. If somebody slipped here on the floor, we all be sad, right? We all get affected in a little act that will not be good for us. So move towards being resilient as an ecosystem. And the principles that I have to share here in systems leaders is to have to embrace a mindset that is clear about what you want to change. It should be in our DNA. Spring Rain Global's clear message is sustainability roadmap. That's our thrust. We want each and everyone to become sustainable. Support evolving paths to systems change by funding systems leaders with transformative visions of improved systems rather than just working on projects. I know project is good, but if you keep doing projects and you're not thinking on a systems approach, then chances are resources might not be used efficiently. Work in partnership and work against power dynamics. One of the greatest struggle is power. Even in politics, the most number of election is last year and this year. That calls for a leadership call. And sometimes you say, well, I can't do anything about it. He's the leader. I might wait for another 5 years until the next leader will come out, but the problem will worsen, right? So we need to play a role on challenging power dynamics and prepare for long-term engagement and being realistic about the time it takes to do systems change. The beauty of systems change, it allows funders to partner and not just fund one project. If you want to finish your project, fine and good. But if you want a systems approach, donors and funders like AVPN and the rest of the other networks will work with us and partner long-term. So systemic funders would support change in transformative visions, not in projects. Leaders with transformative visions. It's relational over transactional. Why relational? Because it's when your heart is touched that you remember. And when you remember, you know that still it's not yet done. If it's transactional, we forget. But it's relational, we remember. Because there's the Spirit and there's God that calls us to do that. Systemic funders are also taking the realistic goal that it takes time and that it would enhance efficiency if our actions are coordinated. That's why funders also collaborate. They don't also work independently. They collaborate and work together. So the path forward for philanthropy and transformative level is 3 things. I just want to highlight 3 things. One is, again, collaboration. As we foster the collaboration with a diverse array of stakeholders, it should range from the national government, local community. Necessity is, and it is a necessity already. It is not an option anymore. Assessing multifaceted challenges of today's world requires an approach that combines broad, global perspective with intimate local knowledge that is deeply managed. Data would emerge as a critical tool. Why? It offers clarity. No data, not clear. Where we go? 3rd floor, 5th floor, right, left. For philanthropists, gathering data should not merely be an academic pursuit, but it should serve as a guiding compass towards a more meaningful and informed intervention. We only have 7 years left for 2030. Basketball will tell us that if we play the game, we need to understand the data of how far are we to the... If you don't have a scoreboard, then we don't know whether we're winning or we're not winning. But we're doing good. However, this is one of the areas that we are working. Historical data helps in evaluating effectiveness, but real-time data equips us with timely feedback. It equips us to empower what are we going to implement and when, without the constraints of waiting for another research and another, doing things. All of us here are real-time data source, I should say. The latest we can support and provide is in us. And last innovation in this pathway is diversity in funding models. It is important that we diversify our funding models. Why do we diversify our funding models? Because it's no longer a box type solution. You asked for grants when grant is needed. But if impact funding is needed, you align with impact funds. You go into equity if there's a social enterprise. Gone are the days that we have to think only of one. So funders right now are actually looking at a model. Both challenge and opportunity lie in aligning these diverse interests towards a singular mission grounded in one unified purpose. So this is now the stimuli. Philanthropy is global. You have the world to help you solve. You have the world to contribute to a solution as well. Business entrepreneurs right now are creating wealth and searching for models of philanthropy that connects with their business approaches. How do you align people where? For people who are in the food business, who don't have, and look at people who are suffering. In the US, you open their refrigerator, you see a lot of food. And I said, how can you give this to the community in Africa or in India or wherever? Why? Because it's just so disconnected. So we just have to make sure that we are actively advocating. New generation of family-based philanthropists are now reviewing for traditional giving. Why? It is the young that will be affected, not us. It's our children. I'm doing this because I have a daughter. I'm doing this because there are still children born. It's a call of action past our lifetime. There is an increasing pool of professional talents wanting to volunteer, and social entrepreneurship and hybrid organizational models are becoming mainstream in officering philanthropy. So what is the right ecosystem? The scale, severity, and complexity of our problems calls for increased collaboration among funders. And with the global challenges and SDGs ahead, it is becoming critical to leverage resources, but I like to emphasize domestic resources. Unlock that huge potential because there's a lot lying on. Father Alwen Jimenez could attest to you that a small diocese like San Carlos raised more than $2 million in that community. How do you say that? There's power in the community that we have to unlock. So the philanthropy knowledge should be to look at experts' opinions. The giving system of the donors has to be institutionalized also. The nonprofit and reporting system, there's a process in doing that so people keep giving. Because if you keep giving once and there's no data, people will not know, is there still hunger there? Are you okay, Father? Are you okay, Bishop? We're not still talking on progress. And that's very important, that what we want to do as well. The nonprofit also asks us to network with, why should there be systems, audits, and all of that? Because money is involved and we need to know where are the gaps and where should we go. Is there a good ROI? Are we going equity sharing? Are we going impact investing? There's a lot of huge resources, but mind you, these resources should stay in earth because these wealthy enough funds can be taken if we leave this earth. So let's not waste a time that we're not giving it or we're not even sharing it. So that's the call that we are actually nurturing here. And in an ecosystem approach, philanthropy needs to be more organized. So it may take better care of its own. Development of philanthropy should emerge and has exposed imbalances, but it has to be developed. And the numerical growth of philanthropy has been accompanied by growth in the complexity of institutions such that hybridity is fast becoming the norm. You have to be hybrid. It's a mix of grants, funding, equity, impact investing. You learn more about that the next 2 days. I'm just opening your minds to be ready and not say, well, I don't like that. I just like this. No, because this is not about you. It's about the people you help and the massive need of resources that we are up to. So the value is that you provide that support system and you go at community level, build local resources for communities. Because at the end of the day, funders come, Dini always say funders come to scale and they go to other organizations, they leave you. And you can't just depend as well for those who are working in communities. We have to be grounded at community level, look at the area, leverage more resources that attract attention for other funders. Look at national level too for organizations who are at the national level to ensure a functioning overall environment for philanthropy. And at global level, it is culture worldwide practices, bridge donors and recipients, and influence the global framework for philanthropy. Now, in closing, allow me to say that I'm just not talking, we're also walking the talk. Allow me to share the impact of SRG journey. Our thrust for Spring Rain is to build capacity building to drive impact. We have our framework called the 7-pillar capacitation model. And this is what we intend to empower everyone across the globe to drive impact. And we don't just want to have an ecosystem of good. Father Gerald always emphasized this. Our ecosystem should be functional. Right, Father? And functional is not about waiting. It's about actively engaging and listening and volunteering. And our collective impact will address, at least have something to report to UN that we're doing something. And we report to God that we're doing what we had to do when you called us, Lord, to be in philanthropy. We never know why we're here. But there is a much bigger purpose because we have the influence and the power. So capacity that drives impact. The 7-pillar capacitation model of Spring Rain Global is a game changer for us. Being able to work through the ground from bottoms up, leadership and governance has provided competent team and systems. I saw leaders from the time we talked to them when they are now, they're completely different. Their minds have been open. They can speak in the podium. They can talk about the things that they do. They can innovate. Program development will amplify what advocacies do you want to reach and how do you strengthen those programs. Philanthropy will help you attract more funding opportunities. Financial planning pillar will teach you about sustainability. Data will actually lead you to analyze and refine strategic directions. Ecosystem building will strengthen the network and manage existing networks. Spirituality is very important because the one doing philanthropy is not a robot. It's a human being. And every human being can only survive if you have the spirituality cultured in us, that we don't blame when things are delayed. We act and say, how can we help? How can we move this forward? We declared 1 billion funding last year. Vincent will share about the framework on that. How can we look at this when we were talking about a lot of things in our dreams? So this is our capacity building program in Spring Rain that has impacted and drove a lot of impact. I'm sure one child has been fed, one child has been sent to school, one person has been given healthcare because of the impact of what our organizations have done. So in a record of less than 20 philanthropic development offices on their own, using the capacity building, raised 798 million already in funding opportunities. This is the recent data that our database officer has given us, but this is still not yet. For me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But close to $1 billion of funding raised in the grassroots is something that funders have to look at, that you can match to scale for the funders who are listening to us here right now. And here, we've also managed to move matching grants support at 30.7 million in peso already. And our collective ecosystem fundraising have supported 72.6 million in raised funds. I'm sorry if I have to share the numbers, because sometimes when you do philanthropy, you'll say, how much have you raised? How much have we done? But remember, these numbers are people. Numbers have an important story to tell. They rely on you to give them a clear and convincing voice. The world needs trillions of funding. We're still not yet there. We're still not yet there. But the formula is very efficient and effective. So to convert that, it's about 15.3 million in collective fundraising using the model. And here, okay, 180 philanthropic development offices are already in our pipeline. Close to about 14.5 million raised by 10 champion PDOs. And our ecosystem of good has been growing, but this is just the initial funding requirement. Identified down in the communities is about 62.5 million US dollars, impacting these areas. We have in the Philippines, if you see this blue line, this is where the communities are and some funders that are helped. And in Indonesia, in Canada, we have in South America, in Africa, in Italy, and all parts of the world that has rippled to the impact of what you can do just by the dollar that you are able to raise because you did draw something internally in your system. And the focus on impact of the following advocacies, we have capacity building, education, environment, healthcare, infrastructure and housing, social enterprise, and of course, our net zero initiatives. Just to give you an example, Father Alvin, please stand up to be recognized. This is the leader that spearheaded the transformative change in his diocese. For a diocese so small with no corporations, raised as much as almost more than 2 million. But that is still not yet there, Father, no? But at least he stood up to say that a diocese as small as the San Carlos has so much power, how much more for other organizations who have more in the community. Father, thank you for leading the way. Of course, Father John Paul, please stand up. He's the CEO of the Chameleon Fathers. He also, in his leadership, navigated close to more than 3 million of US dollars, helping people who are sick, establishing their hospitals in the way that the chameleon's hands in their hearts have reached to them. When they installed the system, he navigated beyond what we had to offer. Some of the wisdom that God will teach you is unique. We may be just the spark, but the essence of it would lie also in you. Father Ray, would you please care to stand? Magical mission of the parish, who also navigated about 117 million or 2 million in US dollars, bringing people in Tondo to the next level. Father, this is something that we, as a leader, Father, went through the crossroads, but I said the transformative change has to begin in you, Father. If it's not you, then who? And if it's not now, then when? Bakita Canosa Foundation, Father Alan, who will serenade us tonight, is here. Tomorrow, did his role. We almost had to close the Bakita Foundation when we started and said there's no more resources, and said there is. But then at least it gets started to where it is. And of course, the Passionist PDO being a startup, Father, where are you, Father Orvin? He says, Doc, I'd be happy if we have 5 million. But now you have almost $1 million, Father, way up to solve the indigenous peoples in Mindanao. But these are just some few stories of these PDOs. The Carmelite missionaries, of course, being that some of our champion. Augustinian sisters, Claretian missionary sisters, two of our PDOs in the global, Nigeria, in Daughters of Divine Love and the Immaculate Heart. You yourself are funders, as Dini has mentioned. We are in a funding opportunity to create impact to our capacity building journey. So right now, we have 31 PDOs embarking on a 3-year journey of strengthening their internal organization. What is happening right now is that last January, we just declared our capacity building recipients, and after this, we will forge the timeline together to implement this, navigate how to manage expectations as well. So 31 PDOs will be working on a 12 million USD seed fund to impact these advocacies, all to the bottom line of people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And their funding needs is about 62.5 million US dollars or 3.6 billion in peso. If you're a funder, would you fund the 3.6 billion? Or would you first fund the 12 million and make them raise the 62.5 million? I guess there will be more that will be achieved if we support internal organizations and take them to the next level, as the funders are focusing now on capacitating the internal organization for you to grow and scale up. Our common impact for humanity, as I mentioned, is capacity building, environment, healthcare, education, gender equality, food and nutrition, to name a few. There's a lot in this ecosystem, but we don't want to have every organization left behind. But our focus is to install the system. But as we install the system, we will also think of initiatives that will attract access to capital. Opportunities like this will allow you to do so. But of course, we cannot just put the system, raise initiatives, and do not have impact report. Dr. Chen and Dr. Pairach will be working closely on making sure that our impact report will continuously attract funding opportunities for sustainability. And in the process, we contribute to the trillion gap that the UN needs. And we thought it's there. What if God says it's there in you and in us? Maybe the shift of transformative change lies in looking at bottoms-up approach and letting the global funders match the scale that we are able to do. In closing, okay, SRG's PDO capacitation model aims to build the human person, the best version of yourself. We want to build leaders of humanity. We want to empower program implementers. We want to build more philanthropists aware of philanthropy. We want to develop more financial planners, data professionals, and ecosystem builders. Because as a product of this capacity building are people in their best version of themselves. Okay, so this will enhance or increase your organizational capacity, enhance philanthropy and fundraising, improve your program development, strengthen financial planning, enhance database, increase collaboration, and promote sustainability. Capacity building is whatever is needed to a nonprofit for you to be operational, programmatic, financial, and organizationally matured. It is about how to deliver your mission today and the future. And we believe that capacity building is all-important infrastructure that support and shapes charitable nonprofits into forces for good. So you've seen this, and we should be an ecosystem builder. We have the infrastructure, we have the human resource, we are valid in our mission, and we contribute to what we care about the world because we only have one world, and this is what we care. So we encourage the nonprofits, the faith-based sector, and corporate leaders to put your acts together and move and drive collaboration. So as SRG continues to be a member of AVPN, we continue to learn and humble ourselves to understand how networks should function. As we go into the Global Impact Investing Network, we also want to navigate where are we and how do we maximize. The next thrust that we are going to do now is to move towards this impact. And of course, the Worldwide Initiative for Grant Maker Support, which is a network of all the associations of foundations and philanthropy network, where what we are looking for. But it cannot just have there as a list. We need to start moving together. And we will be doing a lot of exciting moments after this July to handhold with everyone in making sure that we maximize the impact and networks that has been presented to us on the table. Our pathway will lead to alleviate human dignity, access to education through our PDOs, communion of faith and culture. When you open your office for philanthropy, you hire people, so you provide jobs. Peace and order, protection, global partnership, social transformation, and values formation. As Spring Rain Global addresses global goal number 17, but we support back end all the goals by the organizations that come to us to make the world a better place, because all of this are very much connected. So there's power in the infrastructure. If we don't organize ourselves as offices, as structure, nothing will happen. There's no point of movement together. There's power in capacity, and there's power if we work as an ecosystem. Philanthropy, again, does not operate in isolation, but in an ecosystem with diverse players and stakeholders, where the right capital and the skills connect with the most promising solutions. But the charitable organization also has to be empowered on the ground. So the development work will continue and people will know what you are doing. It's not enough that we do this. It's not yet over. So we're moving and we're growing in a way that we'll be able to connect. So it is abundantly clear that a deeper and faster and more ambitious response is needed to unleash the social and economic transformation needed to achieve our UN goal. How much is the need? 3.3 to 4.5 trillion. Those trillions cannot happen if we don't also get started with how many millions can we raise on the ground. And then we move and collaborate once it's actually there. Our efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals will require a surge in financing and investments. So before I begin, stop. COVID. Our ecosystem has been tested during the time of COVID. When COVID happened in 2019, we thought that coaching 2020, 2020. We thought that coaching face-to-face was hard. How do we get resources moving? But it was at the height of that time that we realized that when we prepared ourselves, if we wouldn't have talked over in Zoom for the longest time, putting our resources together, in Cebu, 80 schools closed because of that pandemic. We would have lost, but we didn't. Why? Because the structure of the ecosystem is as powerful as the people willing to implement the system across. So I'd like to commend the PDO directors and leaders who've put their acts together, and I'd like to share this video in closing to see how the impact of the ecosystem has moved forward, an approach of a global network that technology can empower. Go. Sorry. This was on our 12th year during the hit of pandemic that we had to navigate a transformative change in the way we do philanthropy. Leadership is about making others better, as a result of your presence and making sure that that impact lasts in your absence. Nurturing transformative change in philanthropy may not happen at the time you expected it, but at a time when you don't expect it, that's when you unleash the opportunities that is very much in the core of your gifts. My favorite line in sustainable philanthropy, we believe that in the process of collaborating and empowering each other, we made the world complete. Thank you for trusting Spring Rain Global, and thank you for not giving up on your advocacies, even if the challenges may be too hard for you. And be assured that this journey of this conference will not just end about talking. We are more of action people, and we've learned that we only need to be great leaders in our own field and become the best version of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Glenda. Now, before I present to you our next speaker, just a couple of announcements. First is concerning the break. Unfortunately, we will have to just continue our presentations. So we'll be having a working break. The tables are all set outside. Feel free to grab whatever you want, some snacks. Just bring them in as we continue our presentations, okay? Second announcement is that pieces of paper are being distributed right now. On them, you may write your question addressed to any of our speakers this morning, because before the lunch break, we will be entertaining some of those questions during the panel discussion, okay? So on to our next presentation this morning. Our next presenter is the regional head of private sector engagement for the International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC, here in Bangkok, Thailand. The ICRC is a three-time Nobel Prize winner in the field of humanitarian organization that works in over 90 countries on the front line of conflict. Our speaker leads a team of philanthropy specialists in Bangkok, engaging individuals, companies, and foundations in Asia Pacific, creating meaningful opportunities for them in partnership with the Red Cross, and standing alongside people caught in conflict and violence. She originally hails from Malaysia and has 15 years of social impact and partnership experience with the UN, INGOs, and private sectors across Asia Pacific, Europe, and the Americas. So this morning, to talk to us about philanthropy in times of crisis, adopting strategies to address urgent needs, please welcome Ms. Hannah Maran.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I feel like I've got a tiny bit of a tough crowd as people need their coffees. But I think I can keep going. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning to all of you esteemed guests. Thank you, Dr. Glenda, for inviting me to speak. It's actually my first time to be with you here at Spring Rain Global Conference. And just for the last couple of hours, I think there's so many leaders from philanthropy and social impact and the community development ecosystem here. So I'm really, really honored to be with you and to learn from your experiences as well. I'm especially glad that I'm going after Father Czar and Dr. Glenda, because I think they've done an excellent job to outline global trends and the philanthropy landscape. So that gives a frame to some of the things that I'm going to say. My name is Hannah Maran. I lead the philanthropy team for the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC. This is a 160-year-old humanitarian organization with headquarters in Geneva. And we work closely with the Red Cross or Red Crescent societies around the world, which some of you may be familiar with. But the ICRC's specific mandate is to assist those caught in conflict and violence. Dr. Czar, Father Czar earlier talked about conflict. Around the world today, we count over 120 active conflicts, Some of the more visible ones are the ones you see on your screens quite often. That could be Gaza, that could be Syria, and close in the region, Myanmar. But some of the more invisible ones, Yemen, South Sudan, these places that hardly get any airtime, these are the places that my colleagues and I work for and with in. Our principle is neutrality. We don't take sides, and we work urgently to assist in the basics of life. That's water, shelter, food, medical care. We're there in times of emergency, and we stay on, trying to invest in long-term solutions to rebuild communities long after conflict has subsided. So that's the organization I work for. But what is my role? My role is to engage philanthropists, corporates, and foundations in the region who want to partner with the Red Cross and walk alongside those caught in conflict and violence. I've had the privilege of serving in international roles with the ICRC and the United Nations for over 10 years now, but my roots are here in Asia. I'm Malaysian, and I was raised between Kuala Lumpur and the rural highlands of Sarawak and Malaysian Borneo. So when Dr. Glenda asked me to speak about philanthropy in times of crisis, adapting strategies to address urgent needs, I thought I might do this drawing on my experience as a philanthropy professional working for a global humanitarian organization, but also as someone from the region and working to engage with Asian philanthropy. So first, what I'd like to do is provide the context for the term crisis and the potential for private philanthropy to respond. Second, I'll share some thoughts about how we might address urgent needs in times of crisis. Then I'll share a quick thought on Asian philanthropy and its potential to usher in global solutions. And finally, I'll close with a summary. Does that sound okay with you? All right, super. Good. So let's talk about the context. Where do we find ourselves today? In recent years, we've witnessed crisis upon crisis. Our world has really changed. We no longer deal with crisis and urgent needs in our own communities. Today, a crisis far away from home will have ripple effects in our own communities. Take the case of the war in Ukraine, which has caused the costs of food and fuel to surge. COVID-19 also added more pressure to healthcare and socioeconomic systems in our own communities. Climate change and resource scarcity drive and escalate crisis, and we see the impact of all these in our everyday lives. In the cost of food, the cost of lighting our homes, we see it even in the conversations that we have around our family dinner tables. Our world is more interconnected than ever. In all these, we've seen also the growth in philanthropy in responding to crisis. In Asia Pacific, we saw a significant outpouring of philanthropic support in response to Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines, to the Japan earthquake and tsunami. And in 2020, there was the watershed moment for philanthropy. The COVID-19 pandemic sparked an unprecedented philanthropic response around the world. Some $20 billion was committed in 2 years, by one account, towards key areas of research and recovery. And since then, we've seen accelerated giving towards many crises, the earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, and more recently, the crisis in Gaza. So in crises like these, or natural disasters, millions can be uprooted or forced to flee to other cities and countries. The speed at which these crises unfold is exactly why the striking feature of philanthropy in times of crisis is the scale of capital being committed and the need for speed and efficiency if the response is to be impactful to mitigate human suffering. But in practice, speed and efficiency is not always straightforward. For you funders in the room, you're faced with the challenge of needing to give swiftly to meet urgent needs to affected communities, while needing to be strategic about fund allocation to ensure the right needs are being met and your support can be sustained. To the responding organizations in the room, on the other hand, you're faced with needing to deliver and scale up responses in contexts that are fast-moving, volatile, while also trying to ensure good stewardship and accountability of resources. So how can these elements work together in practice, and what lessons emerge in navigating the complexities of philanthropy in crisis? I thought I might share with you 5 perspectives that I have seen as essential for effective and strategic philanthropy in times of crisis. I'll focus on traditional philanthropy and partnerships with the private sector, as that's what I know best. I won't be covering blended financing instruments or social enterprise, as I know a few speakers in the agenda will cover this in depth today and tomorrow. All right, so number 1, relationships need to be in place to respond to urgent needs. In a humanitarian crisis, as in any crisis, you'll very quickly find out the quality of your relationships. And these will need to be built and nurtured over time. When I say relationships, this includes the relationships with the communities on the ground, which will crucially inform your understanding of local needs. I also mean relationships in place with the local authorities, as this will determine access to and coordination into affected areas. And importantly, donor relationships need to be in place. Essentially, this is a network of support available to you and who trust you as their partner of choice. Trust and transparency cultivated over time ensures quicker disbursement of funds during crisis, and donors are more likely to consider flexible funding, that is, empowering your organization to optimize resources and adapt to evolving needs. I know there's a panel later on trust-based philanthropy that will explore exactly this. Now let me share an example about relationships. In 2022, when the Ukraine conflict escalated and humanitarian needs increased exponentially, the ICRC was able to rapidly scale up humanitarian response and deliver assistance to the thousands needing help, as we had been in Ukraine at the time for 8 years. These were existing relationships with local communities, together with the Ukrainian Red Cross, relationships in place with the relevant authorities, and also we could count on the long-term relationships with donors to step up quickly and come alongside with additional support. I have used ICRC as an example now because I know this best, but I'm sure in this room you all have experience of this from your own organizations and how you leveraged your trusted relationships in times of crisis. Number 2, preparation for impact is crucial to be able to respond to crisis. On the part of the donor, you would have needed to identify and vetted the responding organizations and keep yourself updated with the regulatory environment, or work with an intermediary who has already done this vetting for you. On the part of the responding organization, due diligence policies and fundraising infrastructure will need to be well established and stress tested for a rapid response. For example, the responding organization may want to invest in protocols that define levels of crisis or emergency and the various activations that should follow in the next set milestones. For example, the next 2 hours, the next 12 hours, the next 24 hours. And the various teams that deliver these responses, for example, communications, fundraising, or operations, they should be involved and committed to the emergency protocol so each can deliver their part in the crisis response. And number 3, the best solutions are sometimes the ones that are simple, affordable, and fit for purpose. We all love innovation, we all love cutting-edge technologies, and yet in times of crisis, particularly in low-resource environments, the best solutions are the ones that are simple, affordable, and do the job. Let me bring the example of our programs in Cambodia, a country not too far from here, a country that bears the scars of 3 decades of war, and actually has the highest rate of most amputees per capita. Some 1 in 275 people have lost a limb. Our work in Cambodia involves physical rehabilitation services, that is, developing tailored prosthetics for those who have lost limbs to mines or weapon wounds. Our devices are plastic. They're affordable compared to other materials and can be recycled up to 7 times. They are sturdy, so the patients, who are largely farmers, can continue to work in their wet paddy fields, can continue with their livelihoods. The technology also is sustained 100% by local technicians who have been trained and can develop and fit the prosthetics. Basic repairs can also be done by the local bicycle repairman, saving travel time required from the rural areas to the city, and this would ensure minimal disruption to their livelihoods. So really, a world away from high-tech. Of course, this doesn't mean we should always go with simple. In our case, we also deploy cutting-edge technologies, for example, sophisticated drones that can help detect mines and prevent limb amputation altogether. But at times, simple, affordable, and fit for purpose is what works best, and we should be open to that. Number 4, and I know Dr. Glenda has mentioned this, collaboration is crucial to solve the complex issues of our time. Collaborative initiatives that pool expertise, funds, and technology often lead to more impactful solutions than isolated events. For example, the Global Vaccine Alliance, or Gavi, has successfully improved vaccination rates and reduced child mortality by leveraging partnerships between governments, NGOs, and private companies. And here in Asia, we see the exciting development of multiple ecosystems of collaboration across the full continuum of giving. Today, we're all here as part of the Spring Rain global community, and by being here, all of you are contributing to an ecosystem of good that can be leveraged. Another important network in the region is AVPN, with 600 members and growing. And Miss Dini, who will come after me, will speak shortly about it, so you'll hear more about AVPN's work soon. But there are other prominent pooled resource networks in the region. Some names are Asia Philanthropy Circle, Institute of Philanthropy, Philanthropy Asia Alliance. Each of these vary in scope, focus areas, and mechanisms, but all share the mission of fostering collaboration across the philanthropic sector to amplify impact. And I know Dr. Glenda has talked about some of the networks that you belong to, which I know do incredible work. And the last one, long-term philanthropic support is needed if it is to bring lasting impact. And the key word there is long-term. The challenges that philanthropy is looking to tackle are complex, and it needs sustained support. Often, funders have limiting criteria that are time restricted. We've had experience with a donor who was so impressed and satisfied with the impact of the program they supported, but could not proceed as their own internal rules prohibited funding past the second year. Yes, a philanthropic response to urgent needs is important, but the overarching aim of philanthropy is structural change. So sustained support through all phases of the recovery and all phases of the project is really essential for lasting impact. So I've talked briefly about the 5 elements to consider, but as we are in Asia, I must say a word about the potential of Asian philanthropy. You may be familiar with some of the wealth statistics in our region. According to Nikkei Asia, Asia is now home to more billionaires than the United States or Europe. We also see that the nascent state of philanthropy in Asia has meant that a unique Asian way of philanthropy has emerged. This builds upon a rich heritage of Asian cultures that deeply values charitable giving, inspired by faith and belief systems, as we see here, but also that values the importance of relationships and the role of government as an agent for social change. Bridgespan Group in 2023 reports that the continent's wealthy are ready to lean into philanthropy more. One poll of business leaders said 9 out of 10 reported that their intention to engage in more public-private partnerships for social good and to spend more to address environmental issues and challenges. So if they follow through on their intentions and match the level of philanthropic spending in the United States, as much as $701 billion per year could be unlocked. So as an Asian person working in philanthropy, I think it's a very exciting time for philanthropy in the region. And this region seriously has the capacity to drive solutions to the biggest challenges of our time. So there you go. Let me recap. Some thoughts for effective and strategic philanthropy in times of crisis. Number 1, relationships need to be in place to respond to urgent needs. Number 2, preparation for impact is crucial to be able to respond to crisis. Number 3, sometimes the best solutions are the ones that are simple, affordable, and get the job done. Number 4, collaboration is crucial to solve the complex issues of our time. Number 5, long-term philanthropic support is needed to bring lasting impact. So in this room today, we have funders, we have doers, we have connectors, we have people who give their time, their treasure, and their talents and their networks. I'm reminded by a quote by Winston Churchill who said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." So thank you very much for doing just that, for giving in different ways. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for this opportunity to be here. I wish all of you excellent discussions for the next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hannah. It is now time for our panel discussion. I think there were papers distributed in our table. If you have questions to our speakers this morning, then please give it to Prasa or Cheryl. I'd like to call our speakers this morning, Father Czar, Dr. Glenda, and Miss Hannah. Please write your questions on the papers that were given to you. And if you have written your questions, please raise your paper. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first set of panelists for today's session. I'd like to ask Father Czar first. You mentioned in your presentation about the impact of politics in philanthropy. Can you elaborate on it, or what's the connection? Is there a connection between politics and philanthropy?
Good morning. Relationship between politics and philanthropy, yes. Well, first and foremost, because certain interests, political interests, overlap with philanthropic interests. Okay, that's why politicians through different state or government organizations and agencies, they try to provide practically people with what their needs, social needs, especially material needs, which is also one of the things that we philanthropists are trying to do. So in one way or another, we try to respond to people's needs in terms of economic needs. We try to find solutions to problems of poverty, unemployment, material crisis, etc. No? And but I also pointed out in my presentation that what the government is doing does not suffice. So we still need the help of good-hearted individuals and groups to complete and somewhat complement what the government or any government organization is already doing to help people. So that's the first point of contact that I can see between politics and philanthropy. There are many things that certain interests that we have in common, okay? Second is that we have to admit the fact that politics plays a crucial role in social development of peoples. First and foremost, because politicians are the ones determining where the national budget goes. And we cannot do much without money, okay? So while philanthropies or donors can work independently of any political association or affiliation, some of our donors may be altogether uninterested in any political matters, okay? The fact remains that money plays a crucial role in the activities both of politics and philanthropy, okay? I pointed out in my talk today that I think what we can do right now as private groups or individuals is that we try to find a way of connecting with the political mechanisms of our respective countries. That's one thing that we should do. We should try to get the attention of our politicians, see to it that our interest, people's interests and needs are put on their political agenda and become part of their political priorities. So respectively, they would come up with the corresponding legal actions, aside from the financial allotment necessary in order to really help people out in their different crisis situations. I know many of us are quite, let's say, we don't trust our politicians that much. I speak of Asia in general, in the Philippines in particular, no? Because sometimes we have a very negative impressions of our politicians. We say, politicians, instead of asking people, they prioritize their own interests, okay? So sometimes they themselves get involved in certain corrupt practices, so we don't know practically where the public money goes instead of investing all that money into people's needs. politicians tend to prioritize their own needs. So we have quite a negative image of our politicians, no? But the fact remains that we need politicians. We need their help. We need to collaborate with them. We need to get them as much as possible involved in our philanthropic activities also, and constantly call their attentions to the real needs of the people, not just the needs they imagine people need to cover up their own personal interests. Okay? And last thing is, I think as private individuals, one good way of calling our politicians' attention is by choosing the right people to put in position during time of elections. I mentioned that for this year, 2024, around 40 elections are scheduled to take place in Asia. And we would decide on the people who would put in position, okay? So needless to say, it will be necessary for us to think very well about their agenda, to see to it that we choose the right politicians, the right people who really have a sincere interest in the well-being of our people, okay? So let's be wise, let us exercise our right to vote, the right politicians, and I think that's one way of really promoting our philanthropic interests with the help of our politicians.
Thank you, Father Czar. Would you like to add to that, Dr. Glenda and Miss Hannah, in your journey with Red Cross also?
I'd like to highlight politics on the realm of leadership, because I think leadership, to add to Father Czar's focus on government, I'd like to highlight the leaders in the room. In every different organizations, there's always political power dynamics as well. And to better relate the authority we have in leadership has to step up from your acceptance of being a leader and how your agenda as a leader would also go down to the needs of the community. And I think philanthropy talks about the common ground, which is love for humanity. I so believe that, for example, in the private sector on politics and philanthropy, for example, Rotary has its leadership structure as well, and whatever would be the focus of governor of this area is respected. However, there is this leadership call to also move beyond power dynamics, to make politics and philanthropy not just in government, but also much more applicable in the organizations of where you are. Because everyone has leadership structures as well, whether especially very highlighting the church. The dynamics is clear, but when we embrace agenda and philanthropy, I would say that the pressing problems should be presented on the ground, and so people would know the urgency of making decisions that would lead to solve problems as well. Now, government is in place and there are systems in government that may be corrupted, but there are also systems in government that are purely also doing so well. How do you map making the strength of the force for good higher and amplified so that the others who are at a loss maybe can be drawn to the right direction? And I think leadership organizations like AVPN, Rotary, Spring Rain Global, what Hannah was also sharing about their organization, should take the lead that after all, it can be done. And this politics and this gap between the sources of funds from government and will shut up if the problems in the world will become worse. At the end of the day, we have to amplify the voice of what is needed. And if we can't change, my mantra also is not what the government can do for me, but it's what I can do for the government if I have to take that power and role. So I encourage leaders in this room that if you have the influence, then do the influence yourself. If you can influence government, if you can influence policies, if you can influence, then it will begin from there. There is this problem there is this recognition, but there's also this solution. And it takes leaders like in this room, nurture the change you want to change for philanthropy to marry public and private partnerships and make those resources really move to where it should be needed. And I think the change has to start from us as well, and from those who are in government here in this room. You could also be the voice to reach that out to the sector that has the resources available.
Thank you. So you've talked about politics driving philanthropy. I wanted to add a thought related to politics, which is media. Media drives philanthropy, and the more mediatized crisis of our time inevitably attracts more funding. We see more of Gaza, more of Syria on the news, and not so much of Yemen or Central African Republic, for example, on the news. But the needs are just as valid and just as urgent. So what I would say to funders in the room, come alongside the organization that you choose to support. Think about ways in which you could broaden your support, not just to project funding, but to multi-year commitments, such that the organization that you're supporting has the capacity to think long-term and not to be kind of burdened by the responsibility of needing to keep looking for funds. That's what I'd say to funders. And for implementing organizations, really cherish those relationships, nurture each one, bring them closer to you, be good about presenting your impact to them, such that they will stay with you for the long term and you can count on them, and they will consider you their partner of choice for any crisis that comes in the future.
Thank you so much. I'd like to address this. This comes from different persons, but it is about the SDGs. It is directed to Dr. Glenda. Number one is, what are the SDG strategic plans for implementing SDG 2030? And the second one is, the SDG 15-year time frame is about to end by 2030. How can us, philanthropic development organizations, particularly in Asian countries, navigate to primary challenges in achieving the goals given the inequalities and economic disparities? So it is about achieving the SDGs by 2030.
Okay, so I think for Spring Rain Global Ecosystem, we have to touch base on where we are. And the only way to do that is to strengthen our data mapping, our capacity to map the data of where we are, so we understand what are the gaps in going there. It's a more data-driven approach that we will be doing right now, and the next 3 days, there will be sessions on impact measurement, because when they say measuring UN, it's not just about doing good, but it's documenting what are we doing to improve that we're really addressing the gap. And there's a lot of good going on in Asia, but still the record is not clear. Even the race to net zero is not yet even measured at UN level. For the European Chamber has to apply a UN accelerator to measure where are we in our race to net zero. A lot of people are already doing renewable energy, waste to whatever, but how do we measure that? We'll only streamline on data. But it's not just about data, it's about the capacity to gather data, and the capacity to also measure the gaps and do analysis so that all our strategies will not be put to waste. And with the common ground of where Spring Rain Global is in the hybrid complexity of our members in our ecosystem, I think what we can provide on the table from the data would attract more access to capital. Right capital, not just capital. And when you talk about capital, you talk about human capital, you talk about financial capital, you talk about the right infrastructure to enable success, because you may be in an infrastructure that will pull you down and not going anywhere. So all this will have to be mapped year after year so that the relationship between the funders and the implementers will be strengthened and the gap will not take farther, and that we will know that we're progressing and getting there. Unless we do have the right data to work with, there's nothing to measure. However, with Spring Rain's trust on the members of our ecosystem, especially the funders network, we're strengthening our capacity building because we know that we don't have to ask people to say, hey, support us. We just have to show the data that we're capable of implementing all these gaps if only more resources will be tailored to the community on the ground. And I think, Anne, even if the funders are all there, without the community, there will be nothing to achieve in the holistic report of where we are going. It takes the community to make it visible and real in the eyes of the funders that something is going on and something has to be solved. And in the capacity building thrust of Spring Rain, we are highly emphasizing this to the funders as well, that aside from funding programs, it's also but a focus that you may also have to look at capacity and fund that so that organizations can scale and that there will be more ripple effect of the agenda that we're trying to contribute for the global reach.
Agree. I definitely concur. Thank you. To Ms. Hannah, if Asia is having maximum number of billionaires, what is their approach towards philanthropy?
It's a really good question. There's a lot of potential, but the phase that we are in now is really in the early stages, the nascent part of the industry. What they typically do now is give to causes close to home. And when we look at the top 3 thematics that they are interested in, education is right at the top, followed by health, and the third is poverty alleviation. So you can see already in the thematics that it's kind of classic in terms of the things that they'd like to support. And then in terms of characteristics of Asian philanthropy, the first one is really where the philanthropic capital is very much passed through their business interests. So this could come through CSR initiatives from their corporation or their foundations that come through. They're very unlikely to set up kind of Western-style foundations that give 100% grants. And then the second part about Asian-style philanthropy is that the large majority of families that have philanthropic vehicles design and implement the programs on their own. They really want to have that control over it. And the last one, which really differs to Western ideas of philanthropy, is the trust and the complementary role that they take alongside the government. So initiatives that are channeled through philanthropic support really come through and come alongside what the government wants to do. So those three things are distinct. But I think it is an exciting time. I think gatherings like this and exchange of ideas really help propel the industry forward, and I think it's only a matter of time that the industry matures to its full potential.
Thank you. There is a statement that that one of the audience wants you to comment. My impression from the talks is that the better organized a group is, translates to greater likelihood to get funding. Please comment. Yeah, starting with Father Czar.
Well, every time I hear people talk about philanthropy, about different advocacies, different needs, I try to put myself in the part of possible donor, okay? Because one thing that I really would like to look for before I shell out any amount, be it small or big, is transparency, clarity in vision, in structure, organization, okay? So institutions asking for donations that possess those qualities would more easily catch my attention, because I would know exactly where my money would go, how my money would be used, how it would be managed, and I'm sure that there would be a higher level of accountability. So the better organized, the more transparent, the clearer an organization is as far as its advocacies are concerned, I think that organization would have a higher chance of attracting people's attention and eventually getting more donors.
Dr. Glenda?
The advocacy that you're supporting attracts funders, but it is your structure that will keep them going with you. Even if you have the simplest project, people give. But what we want to do is to make them keep giving. And it is the organized, institutionalized structure that you have that will allow these funders to partner and not just give. Your causes are already amazing, but it's not enough. You have to be organized to ensure that more partnerships and long-term engagements will happen, and it will just attract and fall in its place.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes, I think you've both made really good points, and I think receiving a gift is only one part of the process. The other part is really being steward of a gift, to come back to your partner and say, here's what we've done with your money, this is how we've delivered, this is how we've been accountable, and please come back to partner with us for next time. That's a business process that needs to be in place, and it needs to work well, 100 times over well. So it can't just work one-off, because that's really how you lose supporters along the way. So I totally agree.
Thank you. This is for Father Czar, but I also like you to comment. There are two questions. I'll mix it into one. It is also a reality that there is corruption among foundations. Some are not genuine in their advocacies and are bogus. How can we prevent this? That is number one. Number two, how to empower voters, especially those whose votes are for sale during election period, that leads them to greater slavery of poverty and at the mercy of the powerful. Father Czar?
Okay, let me start with the second question, which is unfortunately a very sad reality that we have to deal with, especially here in Asia, no? Where because of the economic situation of voters, of people, it's quite easy to buy them, okay, to solicit their votes, and then it becomes a vicious circle. Because the moment you sell your vote to a certain candidate and you put a person who is not honestly interested in the well-being of the people, then you know how the situation would end. It's a very sad situation, and that is where integrity, principles, values really play a crucial role. I think in philanthropy, we must not talk only about certain policies, mechanisms, structures, procedures, how to set up PDOs, etc. No? I think one good thing that we're doing in philanthropy is also by bringing about education, proper teaching people how to think very well in terms of value formation, so that they will be properly guided in every action that they take. Specifically, talking about political election, I think philanthropies or philanthropic organizations can help people a lot develop critical thinking and develop the capacity to discern which things are really more important that would guide them in choosing their leaders. People would be more principled, would be more value imbued, would be more steadfast. They would not be easily tempted to just sell their vote in exchange for money. Okay, we just have to start from somewhere. And one thing that we should really and definitely avoid at all costs is that of being a part of the same vicious circle over and over again. Because unless we are willing to stand firm and to uphold our high morals and principles and values and say no to any form of corruption, then I think we would never be able to free ourselves from that vicious circle which we find in politics.
Madam?
It's a systemic issue, so it demands a systemic solution. So I would say that we all have to be more conscious about it on what we're able to influence and begin from there. Election, and I still believe that your advocacies would change the system, because the more you support quality access to education, the more you educate people that there's a lot of livelihood programs going on independently. Your advocacies, if you put it right in the proper programs, will change the way people think about depending on others for their survival. That's how people have to adapt to where am I loyal to. It's my life. They fed me, therefore I follow them. But at the end of the day, if we empower dignity among every individual, they will then say, I am dignified to do what I had to do, and I should choose the right organizations that I have to be connected with. However, also, we all have to play a role on not just doing this because election is happening. It should be a constant reminder of ourselves. We should not be reactive and do education because there's election. It should be already in our DNA. Practice the right political values in our own individual organizations where we are. I still believe that systems change people. And if we put in the right system, it will allow you to behave differently. But no one can change from afar. It would be too hard. But if we start from within, it will be doable, it duplicates, it makes life better, and that starts the change in the organization where you are actually doing. And it's a challenge, but it will continue to change when we are conscious about it. And I think that's my stand for it. I also don't like to think of things that's so hard to make it happen. I mean, it's too wishful thinking. I'd rather want to go for things that would allow us to do because it's within our influence. So think about this, not because there's election that we do it. It's a way of life. It's in our DNA to be dignified from within. Yeah.
Ms. Hannah?
I think they've answered it really well. I have nothing to add to this one.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I would like to read it raw, and I'd like to ask you in English. Nganong lisod man himuon ang collaboration among NGOs, faith-based organization, and corporation? Why is it hard for collaboration amongst NGOs, faith-based organizations, and corporation?
Yeah, I think it can be hard at the beginning. Each organization may need to compromise on some of their reporting or their processes to put things in a straight line. But I think in the long term, it'll pay off, particularly for big crises of our time. We need people to come together. And the impact of philanthropy is really amplified if we come together across sectors and even across different industries. So definitely painful at the beginning, but there are many examples where we've seen it worth the pain.
Correct. Agree, Madam.
And an environment has to be enabled for everyone to convene. Unless there's no convening, there's no way of connecting. We will still be working in silos. I agree with Hannah that it's kind of hard at the onset. In Spring Rain, we did not imagine that faith-based organization can come together from different congregations, and now funders are seeing you all, and now people are becoming, not because of anything, but because we just enabled. And I think you have to continue enabling among yourselves conversations like this. We're taking the lead to let you know that platforms like this works. And it has to begin from there and then grow to be able to continue more collaboration and conversation. It's impossible that you wait, but you have to make the conversation happen on the table.
Father Czar?
I think the question, why is it hard to...
For NGOs to collaborate and corporations and faith-based?
Well, the fact remains that every group of people, every institution for that matter, made of human beings, fall under the sway of certain religious convictions. They have certain faith beliefs, no? And sometimes we have to admit the fact that there are certain beliefs, religious beliefs, faith convictions that we have that sometimes are not really conducive to the promotion of certain philanthropic activities. Okay? In fact, I think I mentioned this in passing during my talk that one of the causes, for example, of discrimination of women in certain parts of the country have very strong religious foundations. They are founded on certain beliefs, and that is a purely religious cultural issue. I think when it comes to philanthropy, we must learn how to rise above that level of religious diversity. We must be able to encourage everybody, independently of one's faith, one's religious conviction, to focus more on what humanity really needs, what people have in common rather than what separates them. Okay? Because if we allow certain faiths, certain religions to get in the way of our philanthropic activities, that could be quite problematic. It's the same thing that we're doing when we talk about interreligious dialogue. Okay, we focus more on what we have in common, what can unite us, rather than what can separate us. And I think we are capable of identifying what are the common values that even different religions share. Okay, that's a good starting point, no? So let's not allow certain religious beliefs and faith interests to get in the way of our philanthropic activities.
Agree, Father. Even if the same faith but different charism, still it's hard to collaborate. Yeah, thank you. This one is for Dr. Glenda. Can you please elaborate or give us a clear picture of the $1 billion challenge declared last year? What projects were already funded?
It demands a transformative thought leader thinking in that line. But last year, I remembered that the speaker, Mr. Vincent K.A. Lim, will be sharing about that next year. But to declare a 1 billion funding is not about having the 1 billion fund the next month. Agree? To declare a 1 billion funding was telling that our ecosystem in the next 7 years have huge billions of funding requirements. And to get there, it's not about the money per se, but it's the journey going out there. So as far as how we define that declaration, it was a commitment among different stakeholders that we are ready to move this forward. And I think we have begun with our Singapore network moving forward with the Springwing Global Foundation in setting up the capacity building fund. Because it's easier to ask for money, but it's not that easy to make your organizational capacity capable of doing so. Don't be in a hurry of the money. Go back to your organization and think, are you capable of doing that? Are there organizations mapping that you have done so far? Only a few PDOs, I think, have taken the stride to work and move forward, to take that journey. However, the rest of the others are trying to organize themselves as well, because it's not just about where's the money, but it's about how is your organization able to take in the funding. We're doing a lot of these steps moving forward on preparing the ground. And the preparation of the ground entailed a lot of different collaborations. And we've done with the collaborations from ABPN to the European Chamber to the Wings Network and the GIIN that we had mapped to share. But the 1 billion is not even enough to cover all our needs. Our funding needs is about 3.5 billion, actually, to be honest. But we saw that it takes a seed of a fund to set up the organization first before you even have to get to where you need to be. Because it's not just a one-time support, but it's a circular kind of movement that we're taking collaborations on the ground. So where are we? We've done with identifying the networks that would put us together, those pledges that will put the acts together on the initial capacity building support, and we'll kick off from there on who are the organizations that will be ready to take into the next level. Few PDOs will be ready to move after July. The other PDOs are still working on their organizational structure to get them ready as well. But we're moving, just so you know. That declaration has been moved. And Vincent K.A. Lim will be here also to share more about where are we in that journey.
Yeah, while you're at it already, the next question is related to that. how can capacity building move to scale funders to support SRG to the next level? I think you mentioned it, but you want to put emphasis on that.
I think we've highlighted already to the funders that more than just funding the programs, we want the funders to strengthen the internal organization, which is basically the important tool or the important direction to make sure that you will not fail when you continuously establish more partners on the ground.
Thank you, Madam. In the interest of time, I'd like to read this last question. This is from the Diocese of Kannur. This is directed to Father Czar. When you look at some of the demographic data, about 1/4 of the world's young population is there in India now. I'll follow that this young grant needs international competence to take up some of the assignments in various parts of the world. Can we think of some special emphasis in empowering this quarter of the world's young in our involvements? Thank you. Can you think of some special emphasis in empowering the youth, the 1/4 that was stated earlier?
I have a very conservative way of looking at things, so I perfectly agree with Maran's presentation when she mentioned that among the advocacies, on the top of the list is always education. And I still believe in the power of education. I think that's where things should begin. So we should be really investing more and more in education, because education is really the key, the access that will enable us to develop ourselves, different aspects of human life, to solve many social problems, etc. No? So I think among the advocacy that I would really put on the top of the list, there will always be education.
Thank you, Father Czar. Would you like to comment on that, Madam? Okay, thank you. Okay, I will take this as the last question. The predicament of some foundations, especially when led by popular, prominent individuals, is that possible donors think or have the impression that we don't need any more their support. How do you think can we entice them and convince them that we still need them? How can we separate the personalities from the real advocacy to be able to gain support?
Show the data.
Agree.
Nothing more, nothing less. That will show the gaps. And they will read between the lines.
Yeah. Thank you. Calling once. Thank you so much. That ends our, but before that, sorry. I'd like to ask you for your key takeaway regarding your sharing for this morning. Father? Ms. Hannah, your key takeaway for your sharing, please.
Maybe just one. I think, this is my first time with this group here, but it's really impressive, the energy and the ideas that are coming from this group and just the presentations that we've had today. I guess to say, I work for a global humanitarian organization. Maybe some challenges are different to what all of you experience in your different lives and the roles that you're trying to do here. But just to say, we're all trying to solve the challenges of our time, so we're all walking in the same direction. So congratulations to all of you for pushing ahead, and I'm really delighted to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Dr. Glenda?
Keep nurturing the environment that will allow you to become the best version of yourself. The solutions are in our hands, and if we collaborate and continue to be the thought leaders we are, then it will take us to greater heights. Allow this occasion to open your mind and be logical in the way we do things, but also put some point of the heart and drive collaboration in this 3-day conference. So thank you for your attention and active participation.
Father Czar?
Okay, keep your feet on the ground. Keep your eyes open. Keep your mind open, but keep your heart even more open. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Czar. Thank you so much, everyone. It is now time to give the plaque of appreciation to our speakers. May I call Engineer Mark Anthony Antonio, the CEO of Springwain Global, Father Gerald Borja, the CEO of Springwain Global Foundation, to present the plaque of appreciation. Plaque of appreciation is presented to Father Czar Emmanuel Alvarez, OSA, as a keynote speaker during the 8th Springwain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Igniting the Philanthropy Landscape in Asia, presented this 24th day of July 2024 at the Amari Bangkok Hotel, Bangkok, Thailand. Signed, Engineer Mark Anthony Antonio, Chief Finance Officer of Springwain Global, Father Victor Gonzaga, OSA, Chairman of the Advisory Board, Dr. Glenda Miro Antonio, Founder, President, and CEO. Father Czar, please accept this plaque. Plaque of appreciation is presented to Dr. Glenda Miro Antonio as a keynote speaker during the 8th Springwain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Nurturing Transformative Change in Philanthropy, presented this 24th day of July 2024 at the Amari Bangkok Hotel in Thailand. Signed, Engineer Mark Anthony Antonio, Chief Finance Officer, Springwain Global, Father Victor Gonzaga, OSA, the Chairman of the Advisory Board. Madam, please accept this.
Plaque of appreciation is presented to Hannah Maran as a keynote speaker during the 8th Springwain Global Asian Philanthropic Development Conference on the topic Philanthropy in Times of Crisis, Adapting Strategies to Address Urgent Needs, presented this 24th day of July 2024 at the Amari Bangkok Hotel. Signed, Engineer Mark Anthony L. Antonio, Chief Finance Officer of Springwain Global, Father Victor F. Gonzaga, OSA, Chairman of the Advisory Board of Springwain Global, and Dr. Glenda M. Antonio, Founder, President, and CEO of Springwain Global.
Thank you so much, everyone. That ends our session for this morning. It is now time for our lunch. Please go down to the 4th floor for our lunch this time. Please be back. I hope you can be back by 1:15, please. Thank you.